Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Aracely Campa Ramirez, Senior Deputy Director for External Affairs and Policy. This call is meant as a briefing for our stakeholder and legislative partners. We will be taking questions at the end. If you'd like to ask a question, please submit them at any point during the call today using the Q&A function and indicate who the question is for. I'd now like to introduce our presenters. First up, we have Dee Dee Myers, Director of GO-Biz and Senior Advisor to the Governor. Gayle Miller, Chief Deputy of Policy with the Department of Finance. Trelynd Bradley, our Director of the Office of Small Business Advocate. Brian Rutledge, Budget Officer for GO-Biz. And Trelynd Bradley, our Senior Business Development Specialist at the Business Investment Services Unit at GO-Biz. I'd also like to acknowledge our colleagues from Finance who are on the call, Ryan Miller and Emma Jungwirth. They will be available to answer questions as well. And our Deputy Director of the Cal Competes program, Scott Dosick, who will also be available to answer questions at the end. Now with that, I'll turn it over to Director Myers to get us started.
Great, thank you, Aracely. Appreciate it, and appreciate everybody joining us on the call today. It's a big day in governor land and in budget land. And as the governor outlined earlier, the May revision proposes a range of major investments across a number of policy areas aimed at helping sustain and accelerate California's economic recovery. So we're very excited about that. We at GO-Biz are proud to be a critical player in helping businesses across the state to recover and grow. As you'll recall, in January, GO-Biz introduced more than $150 million in proposed new investments as part of the governor's budget. That included funding to help the tourism industry recover, funding to provide technical assistance to small businesses, and funding to mitigate the impacts of retail theft. And of course, there was more. In addition, in February, the legislature worked with us to enact an early action package that created $6.1 billion in business relief. And that package included creating tax benefits for restaurants and shuttered venues, aligning with federal benefits, and restoring the R&D, research and development tax credit, and the net operating loss deduction. So for us here at GO-Biz, that also included $150 million for small business COVID relief grants on top of the nearly $4 billion that's been distributed so far. So now, on top of all of that, GO-Biz is proposing more than $900 million in additional new investments as part of the May revision, bringing our total proposal for next year's budget to more than $1 billion. That includes substantial relief for hard-hit industries and those disproportionately affected by the drought, as my team will discuss, and then substantial funding for several other proposals, which we'll also discuss. I wanted to introduce two. The first is Cal Competes, and as you know, there are two components to that. For the Cal Competes tax credit, we're proposing a 5-year extension to the current funding level of $180 million a year through 2027-2028. The credit is actually scheduled to expire after next year, and we wanted to extend it early to allow businesses to plan ahead and to take advantage of our most powerful incentive for attracting new employers, new jobs, and new investment. In addition, we're proposing $120 million to fund another year of the Cal Competes grant program. As you know, that was extremely successful earlier this year with our first round. We're proposing technical adjustments to that grant program to clarify that this next round will also count as matching funds for applicants pursuing semiconductor projects. We expect federal funding to be available for that in the near future to address both a state and national security priority as we try to onshore semiconductor R&D manufacturing projects. And we want California to be able to leverage that funding to bring those jobs and that research here. And the second proposal I wanted to flag is one of the governor's clean energy investments. We're proposing $250 million for clean energy financing through iBank. So please take a look at the clean energy financing section in the A pages for more information about that. Before we dive into more of the GO-Biz details, I want to turn it over to Gayle Miller and the team from finance to give us a broad overview of the budget and how all this fits into the bigger picture. So Gayle, over to you.
Thank you, Dee Dee, and to your whole team. I think all of you know the elevated position that GO-Biz has taken, both as really changing and implementing economic development in our state, and also just as partners and leaders in this process. So we're really grateful. And obviously just to Ryan and Emma, who are on this call, are phenomenal in terms of their intelligence and ability to get things done. It really is a team sport. And so I hope that as you have questions either on this call or later, that you'll reach out to our team and we'll try and get you information, because I know that there's a lot of incoming as you're just trying to absorb the 8 pages and understand everything that's in this $300 billion proposal. I see many of you on the line that I know, and I think we never thought numbers that high were possible. So it's a significant budget. And I think in terms of really good news, the resilience that we have, it's pretty phenomenal. The reserve is 37.1 billion, much higher than we even anticipated in January. And so because I see some of you that might be interested in this, I'm going to give you the 4 parts. It's the rainy day fund deposit. So that's typically what you all think of the reserve, which is 23.3 billion, 9.5 billion for school stabilization account, 3.4 billion in operating reserves, and 900 million in safety net reserves. And when the governor talks about 94% of the proposals being one time, to the extent that there's changes in the economy, we know that the one-time expenditures are the easiest for us to sort of sweep in terms of any issues that could or may come up. We do this every year, no matter what our growth is. But Ryan and his team are solely responsible for the economic forecast and for all the predictions. It's extraordinarily difficult work, and obviously the last 7 weeks of the stock market were not included. And then in terms of I'm just going to go over retirement liabilities really quickly, and then I'll talk to you about what is and is not in the surplus. Retirement liabilities, we do continue to pay down. I know many of you remember a time when we hadn't even started. Since 2017, we have paid down almost $22 billion of retirement liabilities. So we are closer and closer to that 2046 number than we've ever been before, with that 7% discount rate. And in the past 5 years alone, the governor has put 12.7 billion into paying off the reserves. And over the next 4 years, the multi-year in our budget plans to pay off 11 billion in that retirement liability. So it's 3.4 billion this year, and then 7.6 billion over the next 3 years. And so the surplus number, you hear different numbers. The number the governor used this morning, because all in 98, which is the mandated sort of surplus, and non-98, the number he used is 97.5 billion. So it is in fact a really significant surplus. But then of course that we have to take out the 98 requirement and all the funding we've proposed for the tax refunds and other pieces of the budget. So, and the final thing I'll leave you with, just because I thought it was this was actually the governor's idea to take a really close look at our capital gains, both in terms of an average and then the highest rates we've had. I don't think it means anything more than proceed with caution, which those of us at finance are always really excited to say that. From 1976, the average capital gains is 5.04%. And as the governor points out, in 2000, capital gains were at 10.4%. And then in 2007, they were at 8.39%. And our estimate for 2021 is 9.7%. The only other times in our history, this is just a little fun fact for you to talk about at your cocktail parties tonight. In 1986, before the Tax Reform Act, capital gains were at 9.51. Not a great comparison because of what came later in 86 with tax reform, but sort of an interesting snapshot of what capital gains have looked like in this state. So happy to answer questions. I don't see any up yet, but as you have them, please reach out. And thank you again to GO-Biz for your partnership and leadership. And I know that you all have a lot of questions on Cal Competes. It is by far, we're grateful to the director for talking about that. It is the most effective tax credit program, and we just hope that you continue to use it, continue to talk to your clients about it, and continue to let us know ways in which it's really growing and helping businesses establish in the state. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to the director and see if we can answer any questions at the end. But thank you again for inviting us here to speak.
Thank you, Gayle. Really appreciate it. Obviously, you and your team will be available for questions at the end if we have them, which I'm sure we will. So with that, let's turn it over to Tara Gray, who, as you know, leads the Office of the Small Business Advocate. Tara?
Thank you, Dee Dee. We continue to assist small businesses with economic recovery to accelerate job growth, equity, and inclusivity. Building on the success of the Small Business COVID-19 Relief Grant Program, we're initiating another program. This time we are turning to especially hard-hit industries. The May revision includes $500 million one-time general fund for the California Small Business Hard-Hit Industries Grant Program. Grants will go to the 10 industries that have suffered the most economically and experienced the most difficult time rehiring and ramping back up. Entities with 5 million in annual revenue or less in one of the top 10 hardest hit industries will be eligible for the program. For those that have already received a small business COVID relief grant, they will be able to apply for additional funds. Grants will be between $10,000 and $50,000. And my office will work with our partner network to conduct outreach and engagement in multiple languages to distribute program information prior to opening the application portal for the program. And at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Brian.
Thanks, Tara. So I'm the newest one on the call from the GO-Biz team. So I'll just restate that I'm Brian Rutledge, the budget officer. Proud to be part of this May revision package here. So I'm introducing the drought relief piece. The administration's trying to respond to California's extreme drought conditions by proposing $75 million one-time general fund to create the California Small Agricultural Business Drought Relief Grant Program. So this is in reference to what Tara was just talking about. We're modeling this broadly on the existing COVID-19 relief grant program. The goal is to provide direct assistance to eligible agriculture-related businesses that have been impacted by severe drought. So essentially, we had the first catastrophe of COVID, and now for many businesses, we have another one with drought. So Cal OSBA would administer the program in coordination with the California Department of Food and Agriculture. The grant awards would range from 30 to 50,000. That would be based on the magnitude of declines that a specific business faced in terms of annual gross revenue. Specifically, we're tying that between the 2019 and 2021 tax years. And this is going to focus on the Sacramento-San Joaquin Valley. That's where we're going to prioritize the funding. So of the total program funds, we're also carving out 25% to specifically focus on small farms and socially disadvantaged farmers. And that 25% that we're carving out, that's going to include a piece for technical assistance aimed at small farms and socially disadvantaged farms. We're trying to make this an inclusive program. So I'll turn it over to Trey to speak about ports.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Great to be on this call. My name is Trelynd Bradley, Senior Business Development Specialist at GO-Biz. In January, the governor introduced a $2.3 billion package for supply chain resilience and port infrastructure investments, including $30 million in one-time general fund dollars for operational and process improvements at California's ports. As part of the May revision, we're proposing budget bill language that really kind of dishes out and allocates our $30 million proposal. So we specify that $27 million will be used for a grant program to support containerized ports, so those ports that facilitate and generate traffic volume with intermodal containers. The grants will specify and be available to support cloud-based systems and the cloud-based systems must be used to pursue interoperability with the other containerized ports. Grant funding may not be used in this specific allocation for tracking of labor via productivity metrics or in any way that would infringe on collective bargaining agreements. And in addition to the grant pool, we're proposing a set aside for GO-Biz to allocate towards statewide data aggregation and analysis efforts. The set aside is 2.1 million, and GO-Biz is also authorized to use up to 900,000 or 3% for administration costs. With that, I'll hand it over to Aracely for the Q&A portion. So thank you.
Thank you, Trey. Perfect. And now we will go ahead and transition over to our Q&A. We do see some questions coming in. Again, if you haven't already done so, please submit your questions via that Q&A function that you'll see at the bottom of your screen. I see a couple more coming in. Fantastic. So we will go ahead and get started while folks continue to add their questions. So first up is Carmen Herrera. Thanks for joining us, Carmen. Really appreciate the questions here. You're asking about restating the amount of the new small business grants. So I will defer this over to Tara to go over new small business grants and any details about eligibility guidelines.
So I think we have two, Carmen. So I'll speak to the first one and then let Brian speak to the second one. The first one is the hard hit industries. So the May revision includes 500 million one-time general fund for the California Small Business Hard Hit Industries Grant Program. And these grants will go to the 10 industries that have suffered the most economically and experienced the most difficult time rehiring and ramping back up. So entities with 5 million in annual revenue or less that are in one of the top 10 hardest hit industries will be eligible for this program. And so that will mean that for those that have already received a small business COVID relief grant, they will be able to apply for additional funds. So we're really kind of doubling down on those hardest hit, and we will be providing grants between $10,000 and $50,000 for those applicants.
Yeah, let me jump in and add to that, which I see a couple questions on how are we defining hardest hit. Just to clarify, there will be a BCP available soon on Finance's website, and then there'll also be trailer bill language available on Finance's website pretty shortly. We're hopeful for this evening. At this point, it's kind of a technical situation, but we'll say that the analysis is based on a percentage of job loss during the COVID pandemic. So for an example, accommodation industries and food services were particularly hard hit. So they're in the top 10 industries. And we're using the North American, that NAICS code system that you might have seen in other COVID relief programs that OSBA has been running. So I won't list them right now, but we will ask that you look for on Finance's website for the full list. And it's probably the industries that you are familiar with if you've been tracking this.
Thank you both. And a follow-up question on that, will Cal OSBA be putting out an RFP for administration of the hard hit industries programs? And if so, when do we think that may go out?
Yes, it is our intent to put out an RFP for both the fiscal agent and potentially some assistance with outreach and marketing of the program.
Perfect. And then last one for you, Tara, for now, is Lendistry going to administer the grant program again?
We have no way of knowing that. We do have to put out a competitive RFP. And so we would have to wait for the results of that competitive process.
Perfect. Thank you, Tara. A question for Brian on the drought relief package. Thank you for the timely update and this release. And Brian, did you say that the small farmer relief is only in the Central Valley? What about northernmost California?
It's a great question, Nancy. As written, our proposal is to focus on the Sacramento and San Joaquin Valley at this time. That is big picture, a focus, or that's a reflects available resources. We recognize that this is a broad issue outside of the valley, but this is the proposal that we can come through with at this point and balance against various fiscal concerns. So we appreciate the question.
Thank you, Brian. While I have you, or actually this is for Trey, on trailer bill language for ports, will we be releasing any language on port data connectivity?
Brian, budget bill language.
Yeah, I was going to say I can jump in on that one. Apologies, Trey, but the answer is basically no. We're going to release budget bill language specifically, so there's not going to be trailer bill language for the ports proposal. The budget bill language has been submitted to the legislature, and that should be viewable fairly soon. I'm not sure on the timeline, unfortunately, but so unlike some of the other proposals, you're not going to see ports on Finance's website on trailer bill. You're going to look for budget bill amendments that are more that have now been submitted to the legislature. So we can follow up with you if you want to reach out to us, and we're happy to fill you in on some of that.
Thank you, Brian. I have a question here on UI fund debt. Governor originally proposed in January to pay down $3 billion of the more than $20 billion in UI fund debt, which serves as a tax on most employers. With the surplus nearly 5 times larger, will there be an increase in the amount going to pay down UI fund debt? That's an open question there, perhaps Dee Dee or Finance.
Yeah, Gayle, do you want to take that?
Sure, thank you. The proposal is still the $3 billion to pay down the fund debt. It didn't increase with the May revision. And we'll definitely need your help with that with the legislature. So we'll look forward to partnering on that.
It's worth noting that last year the governor proposed $1 billion to pay down UI debt, and but the legislature had other priorities for it, so it didn't end up in the final budget.
Great, thank you both. Is there money allocated for more worker training to upskill or reskill workers to fill jobs with worker shortages?
I can just point folks to the workforce piece of the A pages. We're unfortunately not prepared to speak to that right now. There are proposals in the January budget. I'm not familiar at the May revise for any updates, but that would be where you could find the details. The A pages are broken up into those subsections, and there will be a labor and workforce section.
But thanks, Brian. If I may, Aracely, is that okay?
Please.
Yeah, so there are more investments. I'll put it in the chat so you can all find it. And then also I think another piece that's really exciting is the community college partnerships. So I'd encourage all of you that are looking for workers to really see about those community college partnerships. And then San Diego State, there's $80 million to build a facility in the Bradley area in Imperial Valley. And I think that'll make a big difference for that area. And that's in addition to meeting the governor's goal of apprenticeships and doing lots of retraining in different areas, including housing and renewable energy. So I'll put all this in the chat, but would also welcome further conversations of how we can work together on workforce, and especially with some of the existing partnerships that we're really trying to encourage through the community college.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Gayle.
Sorry,
did you have something else, Brian? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to add, this is going back to, there was a question about ports, and I've been made aware that the ports language for budget bill, the budget bill language is on Finance's website. I did not realize it is currently on there. So if you want the ports language, someone had asked about that, please go to Finance's website. That's available. It's under the finance letters section.
Excellent. Thanks for that update, Brian. Let's see, we are getting additional questions on hard-hit industries and whether childcare is considered a hard-hit industry, since we lost so many childcare programs during the pandemic and they haven't all reopened.
So educational services are listed in the group of hard-hit industries. So I think you will find some of that there. And we have, just as a side note, we have prioritized childcare specifically in another program. I know we're talking about May Revise, but just so that you know, we have prioritized childcare as part of Dream Fund. So new startups for childcare and Dream Fund have also been prioritized.
Excellent. And anyone interested in Dream Fund, Tara, can go right over to the Cal OSBA website to learn more.
You got it, calosba.ca.gov.
Perfect. Thank you for that. We're getting a question about tourism promotion and any indication about the legislature's receptivity to the proposed 45 million for tourism and possible parameters on implementation.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Brian,
Oh,
were you
sorry,
gonna-
Dee Dee, please jump in.
Yeah,
But I was going to say
I'll
that,
start and then Brian, you can add. As you know, last year, the budget included $95 million for additional marketing of California, and the legislature supported that, and the funds have been incredibly successful in helping to drive the return of a lot of visitors to California, particularly in the leisure category, and that's starting to impact business and group as well. And so we're hopeful that that the success of the first round will help and will certainly make that case to the legislature. Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add?
yeah, I was just going to say, we appreciate the question because of course we are interested in that 45 making it in. So we can't speak for the internal minds of the legislature themselves, what they're thinking now, but we think it's valuable. So we're, as Dee Dee said, the 95 that was channeled through federal funds last year demonstrated that it was valuable, and this 45 would provide the same push for a full recovery of the industry. So
Yeah,
if whoever asked that question, you could call your legislator. That's
yeah,
great.
please do. Visit California estimates that the 95 million in additional spend from last year's budget will accelerate recovery of the industry by a full year. And so we wanted to keep that going.
Excellent. Thank you for that. It looks like we are just about at the end of our webinar here. If there are any other questions that you may still have, definitely please feel free to send that over. Our team has added a link to the chat that will direct your question to the appropriate staff member. Also, remember to follow us on social media to receive notifications and links for future webinars. Links to all of our platforms have been added to the chat. Thank you, Willie. And we also encourage you to sign up for our newsletter for additional resources, including a recording to this webinar. If you think it would be helpful for anyone you know, feel free to forward it to them. A link to register has been added to the chat. So with that, I will hand it over to Director Myers for closing comments before we wrap up.
Great. Thank you, Aracely, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Obviously, it was a lot of information in today's revise, but I will just say on behalf of the team, we are proud to have been able to work on this budget. We think it's a really balanced document that meets a tremendous amount of the state's needs as we recover from the pandemic and the recession and invest in the future across a wide range of issue areas. And we're excited to work with the legislature as next steps to implement to pass and then to implement the measures that are included in this May revise. And so please reach out to us as always if you have additional questions or need more information. We're happy to help and look forward to the process ahead. So thanks everybody for joining us, and have a great weekend.
Thank you all.